What do Facebook, Amazon, and Uber have in common with your healthcare clinic? Before we get into that, if you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe below. And if you could leave a comment and let us know what kind of content you want us to create. Because as we're creating these, we're getting ideas coming from different sources, but we'd love to really know what is it that you want to see on our YouTube channel that would add immense value to you, to your clinic, to your clients, to your team. Okay, let's get into it anyway. If we're looking at Facebook, Amazon, Uber, you're probably thinking, it doesn't have a whole lot to do with my healthcare clinic. Very different businesses, I understand. But if I draw this for a second, drawing the network effect, I hope we can start to understand how we can apply some of these principles. Now, not all of them, it's not going to be a one-for-one type thing, but taking some of these principles and going, well, how can we actually make our businesses better to improve them as the number of customers or as the number of team members actually increases? So what do I mean by a network effect? I'll draw it for you. Let's take Facebook, for example. So if I put Facebook here, and we look at it and we go, what happens if Facebook only has 3 users? Well, you don't really want to use it then because your friends and family aren't likely on it. There's not a lot of value in using it. But if we think of it like this, for every increase in user that we get on Facebook, more people, so more of your friends that join, then you want to join. And if you join, your friends, or friends here, want to join as well, because then they're like, oh, well, Pete's on, so I might as well get on as well. And when they get on, it goes like this, and then their friends want to get on. All right, and it starts to grow like that. And that's just one part of it. Another part of it, if I just scribble that one out, is users and advertisers, which is how it makes its money, right? Well, it's been in the news lately, not doing too well. But the more users there are, the more people want to advertise on the platform. The more people want to advertise on the platform, the more money they can reinvest back into user experience. And that's what Facebook is built on. It's based on user experience. So if you've ever advertised on Facebook before, what you'll notice is that Facebook will, they want you to spend money. But if the ads that you're running take away from user experience, they don't care how much money you spend. They just don't care at all. Gone. They will take that down straight away. They'll take the whole ad account down. You could have spent millions in advertising, but they will take it all down. Okay. Now, if we look at the same thing, Uber. Let's go to Uber. And what happens is if we have users and drivers. Okay. So the more users there are, the more drivers there's going to be. And the more drivers there are, the more users there's going to be. Because if you're in a country town and you try and catch an Uber, there might be one Uber driver. Now, if there's one Uber driver, there's not many people using Uber. So it's a nightmare to try and catch that Uber. But if you're in a capital city like Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, whatever it may be, Uber's everywhere. Okay. And that comes back to the network effect again. The more users we have, the more drivers there's going to be. And the more drivers there are, the more users there's going to be. And it's going to continue to have this flywheel effect within the network. And it's the same thing with Amazon. Another huge business. If we think the more users we get, the more sellers we get. And as users increase, drives more sellers. As sellers increase, it drives more users. And what happens is you get more sellers, then there becomes more price competition. So it decreases the price for the users. So more users join. As more users join, more people want to sell on the platform. And you can see in these 3 businesses here, there's a massive network effect where the more users there are, the more of the other side of the business, whether it's drivers, advertisers, sellers, the more of those people there are. And that allows them to reinvest back into the user experience. And we use these things because it has such an amazing user experience. That's why we do this. And that's why they're so protective of their user experience. So think for a minute in your clinic now is how can we actually have a network effect that works for us? Okay, we're a physical business. How can we actually have a network effect that helps us to grow our business and to help more people? Now, before I dive deep into that one, let's consider the opposite. Let's consider a restaurant, your favorite restaurant, let's say, picture it in your mind. Now, let's say the restaurant has 50 tables, right? And there's 4 seats per table, which means that it has a maximum capacity of 200 people at any one time. Now, the problem with this is, as we have more customers here, this is our restaurant example. I'm thinking 2KW back in Adelaide. Love that restaurant. Absolutely brilliant. As we increase in customers, it's actually going to improve the experience, I would say, up to a certain point. So come over here and we write the experience. We're going to improve the experience by having more customers. But as we get more customers coming in, what's going to happen at a certain point is now you have too many customers. Now you've got 300 people, let's say, that want to have dinner at that same time. So now you have 100 people waiting. That's no longer a fantastic experience because there's a limit to how many people can be served, how many people can actually really enjoy that restaurant. And so at a certain point, it has to actually go, well, now I don't love this restaurant. I used to love coming here. The food was great. The service was great. But now when I come here, the people who work here are stressed because they're trying to serve all these people. There's a huge waiting line outside. The chefs are at absolute capacity, so the food takes longer to come out. So you have these things that come as they scale to the certain point where the actual experience in the restaurant decreases and gets worse. So the more customers you have over a certain point, the worse the experience gets. So I hope you can see what's happening here. It's kind of like an anti-flywheel. So in your clinic, let's just rub this one out. In your clinic, imagine this, right? How can we, and this is a bit of a thought exercise, but how can we make the experience better and the results people get better for every extra client that comes in? And what you'll find is there's going to be a ceiling at some point. It's probably going to be how many people can each clinician see, and then how many clinicians or therapists can you add within that team, within your confined space, without going to some sort of very scalable online kind of model that probably hasn't really been created yet, right? So if we look at our clinic and we look at our clients here, so if we say we increase clients to a certain degree, it is going to increase that experience. And as the experience improves, you're going to get more clients want to come in and see you. As you get more clients coming in, the experience is going to continue to improve. And I'll explain this one. So let's say you have someone who's seeing 20 clients per week, a bit of a physio example here. Now I'd say a senior physio would see 50 to 60 clients per week. If you're seeing 20 clients per week, you're not seeing enough people, I would say, to really hone your craft and get really amazing at what you do. So by seeing more clients, you're going to get more experience. As you get more experience, you're going to get better. And you're actually going to give a better experience to the people who come in. So you become a better therapist. And as you become a better therapist and you help more people and you get people great results, you're going to get more clients come into your business. But then understand that at a certain point, what's going to happen is you're going to hit this point here, which you call our ceiling. Right? Because the network effect that we have can only hit a certain point before the experience may actually get worse. Because let's say these are one-on-one sessions, that you hit 70 one-to-one sessions per week. Sounds great, right? But the problem here could be, and the problem that we may encounter in our clinics, is that when we get to that sort of area there where we're kind of like redlining a car, makes sense? We're kind of like redlining it, is that it's actually going to drop off the experience. The experience is going to worsen. And why might that happen, right? You might not be able to have, there's not enough time for each client. You probably can't have the same experience. You might be exhausted. And because you're exhausted, you can't deliver that same experience. You might not be able to remember the small things. And maybe the 1%ers are the things that drop off. So where you might have called a client after their first appointment to see how they're going, to check in, you don't have time to do those things anymore. And so typically what you might find is that you have this kind of ceiling and you kind of go like this a lot. And you sort of hit this ceiling and the experience decreases, people cancel a little bit, drops off, goes back up to that ceiling, drops off. The thought exercise here and the thing to consider is how can we actually solve this problem in your healthcare clinic? And there are a couple of different lines of thought. One is to not let it get to here, to not let it get to the point where the experience is actually going to drop off because we're seeing too many people, because it's burning us out. And within your clinic, you might decide that, hey, 70, whilst it sounds fantastic from a numbers perspective, 55 is where we're going to cap people. And we're not actually going to go higher than 55 because we know that it's going to actually worsen the overall experience. It's not going to be good for the clients. It's not going to be good for the therapist. It's not great for the clinic overall. So that's one way of looking at it. The other is how could you make it more scalable where you could break through that ceiling and the experience would continue to get better for every client that's added. And I don't have the answer to that one. It's a bit of a thought experiment. I'd love to know what you come up with here. But the last thing I wanted to talk through on the network effect is also your team. So we've thought about it from a client perspective, but flip this now and think from your team, the people that work with you. Now, I don't know if you've ever worked in a very small business that's grown very fast. A lot of people who have, they report that when it was small, they really loved that field, but as it grew, it lost its soul. Now, I've heard this many times. So if we think we've got team members, not staff, team members, we've got team members, and for every team member that we increase, okay, so for every team member we increase, it's actually going to be less time that you as the business owner can spend with that team member. So at what point does the experience for the team start to decrease because we're adding more and more team members in? And how can we create structures within the business where for every team member that's added, so if we say team here, for everyone that's added, the experience, coming back to experience, improves, okay? Because for a lot of businesses, what they find is up to a certain point, for every team member that they add, the experience improves, and it looks something like this. And that's, oops, experience. That's team members. So for everyone they add, it improves up to a certain point. And then it starts to go downhill. And this is a challenge that a lot of small business owners face. Because up until, say, 8 to 10 team members, they do that quite well. But once we start going, 11 plus, it can become really hard to be able to have those really close personal relationships with everyone in the team. And then you can start to get, a few people within the team who form a little group over here and a little group over there. And you can have that sort of disharmony that starts to come from that. And because not everything now runs through you as the business owner, you now need systems, structures, and leaders within your team who are driving the culture because it cannot solely be reliant on you anymore. So this one here, I believe we can impact a lot. The client's one thought experiment, I'd love to know what you come up with. But this one here is how do we change it from looking somewhat like this to actually continuing to improve the experience for every team member that we add. And things that I think about here when we're doing this are, well, I like to think of leaders. And the reason I like to think of leaders is because it provides progression. And something that I'm very passionate about in healthcare, and I'll use physio as an example here. When you graduate as a physio, you are a physiotherapist and you help people, you help clients. Now, 5 years later, you're still a physio and you still help clients, and that's fantastic. But by then, people start to go, well, I'm not really changing or growing in my role. And all my friends who are in different careers are doing this. And then 10 years later, it's the same thing. A lot of people don't see that growth. The role isn't changing. They still love helping people, but it hasn't really changed. They haven't learned a lot more and they haven't grown in what they do. And 20 years later, it's the same thing. how can we provide progression within our businesses to create leaders, right? People who are culture leaders, people who are the education leaders within our team, people who really drive us forwards. And how can we create opportunities for them? Because what might we need within our team? We might need marketing and referrals. We might need someone who's great at systems and structures. But having progression there available for people. Because if it's no longer your team looking to you and your team always looking to you for the answers, the close relationship, to be able to have that conversation, if there are other people within the team that they look up to and they're like, these guys are leaders, this person has my back, I can have that closer relationship with this person, it's going to allow your team to be able to grow and scale and help more people. But at the same time, it's not all reliant on you. And that's where up to 8 to 10, I think you can do that pretty well. But when you're going 11 plus team members and you're really looking to make an impact, that you really need leaders within that business that allow not everything to have to run through you from an emotional perspective, from a team member has an issue perspective. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this one. We've gone through a few different scenarios here, but we're looking at what happens as we grow our clinics, as we scale to help more people. And in this example here, up to a certain point, as we increase the clients that someone sees or increase the clients the clinic sees, the experience is actually going to get better because we get better. We see more people and we get better because we see more people. Fantastic. But at a certain point, the experience might actually get worse because we can no longer service more people and the impact that may have on us because it's one-on-one. And we hit that point of burnout ourselves. So looking at, do you cap a certain amount of people that this is our one-on-one cap? Because we know after this, the experience is going to decrease and we're going to have a graph that kind of looks like this of patient numbers. Or is there a way we can break through that ceiling and help more people? And the last one, looking at the team, because the team are going to have the same challenge. As we grow and as we scale, it's going to look somewhat like this unless we put in place leaders, progression, and different roles within the team and different people within the team that others look up to and others can go to for advice, for help, and for support. Your team always have to feel supported, but it doesn't have to be by you. Now, if you've made it this far, I would love if you could leave a comment below and let us know, what did you take out of this and what would you like to see more of on our channel? Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video, my friends.